matchup. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go over a few different areas of Zerg vs Zerg. So one thing is we're going to look at defending hatch first. Defending a 13-12 sort of all in with a hatch first. Not that you can always do that every single time, but we're going to look at all the little details that allow us to do that relatively consistently. We're also going to look at just general Ling Bane micro. Ling Bane is exceptionally important in Legacy of the Void because taking fast thirds is important. And because a lot of the maps, it's very hard to secure that third with, say, roaches or queens or anything like that. So that obviously leads into the next topic, which is taking a fast third in Legacy of the Void. We're going to look at that quickly, and we're going to look at the idea of how to do that solidly, how to do that safely, because what I'm seeing is a lot of players either taking that third, and it's a massive gamble whether or not they keep it, because they're not sure of how to defend it, or they're just teching up on 2 base, very similar to Hot style, taking a very late third, but as a result their economy is very weak. So those are a couple things we want to talk about. We also want to look at a very generic safe opening, which even Korean players are using on a lot of the small maps like Alrena and Prion Terraces. So that's a lot of different little things. Are we going to be going through these builds in the finest detail? Do this in this situation, do this in that situation? No, what we're focusing on today is looking at, okay, this is a build, they're doing this because of this, here's the broad strokes, but let's focus on a few of the little details which make it work. So details is everything we're going to focus on today. So first of all, why don't we just dive in and start off with hatch first 13-12. This one kind of, I feel, sits outside the realm of everything else, so we might as well just dive into that replay first of all and go with it. Alright, so let's make sure all of our scenes are good, and what we're going to do is we are going to go turn our scene switcher off. Ta-da! And awesome. So we are going to try not to interact too much with chat, by the way, while the show is live, but we are going to ask a lot of questions at the end. So if you guys have questions, please hang on to them till the end of the show and we'll go through that. So first things first is a very good example of defending a 13-12, or in this case, a 13-13, I believe it is. Yeah, he's built one more drone. This is just a replay off ladder. I think it was from yesterday or the day before. And we're just going to be looking at the defensive setup, because that is one of the most important things. Let's turn the sound down just a little bit. It's the sound of all the lava and stuff is going to get pretty noisy in fights. Actually, that's a little bit loud. There we go. All right, cool. All right, guys. So very standard, typical cheesy build. He's going to start Zergling speed. Notice he delays his queen because he's just trying to build a shit ton of Zerglings. Now, on the other side of things, we've done a hatch first. 17 hatchery. We've taken a 17 pool and a 16 gas. Now, 16 gas after a 17 pool basically means you put down your spawning pool and you put the gas down immediately afterwards, basically at the same time the pool goes down. So in terms of defending this, especially on big 4-player maps, a lot of players worry because they can't necessarily scout it coming. Now, luckily, this is not the most well-executed cheese. This is kind of him doing the, I guess not the most unwell executed, it's more the kind of cheesier, sneakier version of it rather than the rush straight to your base. So it is slightly different to that, but it's still a great example. Notice he hid in the middle of the map because he wanted to hide his Zerglings, but now that he's spotted where I am, and also because he's spotted that my Overlord has seen his Lings coming, he's just going to come straight for me. Now, at this moment, luckily I did scouting with the second Overlord. The moment we saw that, let's swap to my vision. We've gone, okay, pull the drones out of the natural, we've put down a Baneling Nest and a Spine Crawler in the main base. This is all relatively standard stuff. We could have gone Zergling speed, but we figured we don't need Zergling speed. Baneling Nest is all you need. And this is where all the interesting stuff starts. So we're just trying to build Zerglings, Queens as much as we can. But already, right here, we've seen some of these tiny little details start to take shape. Now this is the first thing we're going to talk about, which is shift hold position. This is something a lot of players do not use, and it's one of the most useful things in Zerg vs Zerg. Now, what you want to do is you always want to be plugging queens in gaps. Whenever you're dealing with an early rush, even in the mid game, say a big Ling Bane attack's coming at you or something, you always want to be able to quickly plug your queen in a gap. Now, in this case, normally you'd try to do it on the ramp. You'd say move there, and holding down shift, you'd say hold position, so that when it gets to the ramp, it holds position. You do that with the other queen next to it, and you create a tight wall. In this case, of course, he's already on top of us. We just need to get the queen into a gap somewhere where its surface area is limited, and that's going to allow us to just basically hold on a lot longer. So we basically, I don't think we even used it there, but normally you just click there, shift hold position, and then you can continue doing other tasks. Now notice here, because that queen's in a good position, we've actually decided to come down with the Zerglings and fight it. And the reason he's kind of had to pull back rather than just sitting here and killing this is he's got a timer on him to do damage, and he feels a sort of sense of desperation to run into my base and try to kill drones. So already we've slowed him down, we've damaged a lot of Zerglings. What's the next step in defending a 13-12? Building placement. First of all, your spawning pool should always be up against your gas, creating a gap which your queen can squeeze through, but your queen can also block tight, limiting surface area on her, so only say 2 or 3 Zerglings can hit her at a time, and she can even back up in that hole a little bit more, and she's going to stop banelings from getting through. Likewise, a spine crawler. A lot of people build a spine crawler here, or out here, or here. The reason you put it in the mineral line is that way the drones can protect it. If those first 6 Zerglings came across the map into my base, I wouldn't have had any Zerglings out yet. I would have needed to defend the spine crawler with drones. If this spine crawler gets cancelled, guess what? It's only just barely ready in time for the banelings, as it is. So if it got cancelled and I had to rebuild it, there's no way it would be ready right now. Now, from here, this is not going to be the sickest defense, but we're going to talk about some cool little bonus things I could have done here. So yeah, you've blocked one gap, but they can still walk in here, 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 and here. So what you really want to do is you actually want to use some of those Zerglings. Normally, you don't get this opportunity to kind of fight on the low ground like I did, and you'd simply leave your Zerglings in the main base. And what you want to do is you actually want to use, once again, shift hold position to put Zerglings plugging these gaps. Or you can even use a single drone. A drone's quite fat. And because it's in that tight gap, there's no way they can focus that down. It takes 2 banelings to kill it. So that's really going to slow them down. And while they're slowed down, the spine, your queen, they're wailing on your opponent's units. They're doing huge damage. Now what we're going to attempt here in the follow-up is actually a very fancy maneuver where as we're evacuating the drones, obviously running from the banelings, trying to wait for our queens and spine to kill them, we're going to try and grab the last few drones and hold position them in the gap so that we run through the gap and then we leave some drones behind. Unfortunately, we click it just a little bit too late, that Aussie ping getting the better of us, and he does get through and do a good bit of damage. And that looks a little bit painful. But you've got to remember 13-12 is massively all in. We've still got this queen at the natural, and what have we been doing this whole time? We're building 2 more queens, more Zerglings, we've got a baneling nest on the way, baneling nest finished, we've got a baneling nest, a baneling already more, and we're moving a spine to the low ground. So it's pretty much a successful hold. Yeah, he's coming again, but keep in mind, he delayed his initial queen so long that he's just got so few units, and every little bit of damage he takes is massive. I mean, that baneling hit is pretty much over. Once you've got all these queens up, things get out of control. So straight off the bat, we're just seeing, bam, 13-12 over. Alright, so what are some cool things we learned? Shift hold position, number 1, building placement, and once again, plugging the gaps in your mineral line. Little things like that to buy just a little bit of time against Zerg aggression can completely change the outcome of a game. We were far from perfect that game, and yet we still ended up crushing it really hard. So already you see that there's this huge room for improvement in every single game. So, alright, so that was a pretty good kind of basic starting information, just focusing on those details like I was saying. So from there, we want to go into the next section. Just checking on my notes here. Alright. So we want to talk about Ling Bane Micro now, outside of just that situation. We want to talk about Ling Bane Micro in general, some rules for it. Now, some of you guys may have seen a video I did a while ago about the formula to Ling Bane Micro, and that video is definitely something which is still very useful. I'll make sure I get Lycan to link that in the YouTube comments. But you can just Google formula to good Ling Bane video if you're watching live, and I'm sure you'll find it. So this video here is going to show a bit more of that back and forth Zerg versus Zerg Ling Bane. Now, as we're just watching the early game here, we're going to start already talking about the points of that. So one of the most important things in baneling battles, and let's just fast forward through to those points actually. So let me put it on in game just so you guys can see anyway. Make sure we don't blind you guys for any of it. Yeah, so basically, some of the most important points are it takes a lot of banelings to kill an enemy baneling. It takes 2 banelings to kill an enemy baneling, or 3 banelings if it's a morphing baneling. Now, what that tells us is you can imagine if your goal in the game is simply to kill your opponent's banelings, you're always going to be cost inefficient. If their banelings are spread out, you can't get splash damage. You're going to have to spend at least 2 banelings to kill every one of their banelings. Now, that's going to just absolutely kill you over time. That way, that kind of tells us that whoever's forced to kill the enemy banelings, if it's just Zerglings and banelings fighting, is gonna take a bad trade. Now, the reason that's important for us to focus on is because what we start to then realize is if you're attacking into your opponent's mineral line, you're the attacking aggressive Ling Bane player, you're forcing them to engage into your Ling Bane, right? You have to stop their banelings from crashing into your drone line and absolutely massacring everything that's going on. So that basically tells us that if it's just Zergling Baneling versus Zergling Baneling, the attacker, as long as they spread out their stuff and do some fundamental micro, they should almost always get the better trade. And this is something which is very important for us to remember throughout everything we talk about in Zerg vs Zerg. Attacking in the early game, before you have anything that really counters the Zergling Baneling up other than your own Ling Bane, attacking is always the better option. It puts pressure on your opponent, it forces them to miss injects, and it forces them to take bad trades. Now, there's all sorts of fancy micro we're doing here. This is me playing against a top 50 GM player on the Korean ladder, like before the ladder reset, you know, a legitimately pretty strong player, most probably a pro gamer. So it's one of these situations where you see us doing all this fancy stuff with Zerglings. That's not really the most important stuff. Really, what's the most important is the idea of putting pressure on, the idea of spreading our banelings out and clicking them into mineral lines and all that sort of stuff. So if you ever want to avoid those crazy situations, maybe you don't have pro gamer APM, maybe you don't have all that sort of stuff, what you actually want to do instead is you want to get a lot of queens or a spine crawler and some queens up front, and you want to set up an anchor. An anchor is something which is cost efficient against banelings. So this is a term which I like to use because I said the Zergling Baneling can't defend on its own. It's cost inefficient, it's crap. But if you suddenly have 3 queens together up front and a few banelings with it, now your banelings are forcing them to spread out to be cost efficient, right? But we see that allows your queens to sit up front, focus fire down their banelings as they trail in. Their banelings have to be spread out, therefore that gives you the opportunity to focus them down a few at a time. So getting that anchor up is something which we need to really start thinking about if we're a player who's not confident in our Ling Bane micro. If you are confident in your Ling Bane micro though, you want to be aggressive, or you're in a low eco situation where you can't afford to get up extra queens, you can't afford a spine crawler, it's still very early on in the game, that's when we need to focus on some other fundamentals. So let's go back just a little bit here and let's go through the 2 or 3 key rules of Ling Bane. Ignoring this individual splitting off Zerglings and all that sort of fancy stuff, what's the core stuff? So let's go back a little bit further in this replay. So number 1 rule, guys, is to separate your banelings on their hotkeys. There's a whole bunch of stuff out there about different techniques for doing that, using the steel hotkeys, using the old Control-Shift method. I don't give a hell what you do. I don't give a damn. It doesn't matter. Just make sure you separate the hotkeys. Now, the second thing is when you are going for an attack, you want to try and morph your banelings in a column wherever possible. That means like a long line where they're spread out. Now, the reason we want to do that is that means they're already going to be spread. We don't need to have to spread them after they've morphed. Even if our opponent rocks up with some banelings, it's fine. We don't have to be like, oh crap, we've got 8 banelings next to each other. They're all going to get blown up. Something we see far too often in low to mid-level games, and even occasionally in high-level games, is 8 banelings all clumped up, dying to 2 enemy banelings. So you always want to keep them in at most pairs. That way your opponent can only trade at best cost efficiently with them, and you can easily use them to blow up them. Ignore this little Zergling stuff. Yeah, this is great. You can use this micro. If you are a high-level player, you can basically do this simply by grabbing your Zerglings, you click on a baneling with all of them, you then deselect the Zergling by shift left-clicking down here, and then you right-click backwards. But what we're going to see now is more and more banelings, and the second rule of banelings is always keep them moving. If you're not specifically attacking a point, you want to keep them moving, because if they're not moving, the moment they see any enemy unit, whether it be a queen, a Zergling, or whatever, they will automatically detonate. So notice here, our red Zerg player is just constantly keeping these banelings morphing. He's just constantly keeping them moving, sorry. So he's just clicking them, and only trying to A-move them or manually detonate them when the opportunity presents itself. And we're going to be doing the exact same things. We're going to see me starting to set up a sort of mini anchor here, just 2 queens, and look at how I move these banelings around. The banelings are just kind of moving, and their aim is to zone. You don't just kind of A-move them and let them blow up and whatever. Look at this. They're saying, oh, you're coming in with a big ball, we'll move towards you. And what we're going to need to do soon is we're going to need to spread these out. He's going to come in for a pressure, and watch, we're going to spread these banelings out. Pretty bad micro, but you guys get the idea. So basically those are your fundamentals of Ling Bane control. However, a lot of players feel so forced to do all that fancy individual targeting off Zerglings, all this sort of stuff. You can learn that stuff if you look at some of the other guides out there, but the most important thing is if you want to skip that stage, if you're not confident in those sort of fights, get 3 queens up really quickly. Whenever you see a big attack coming, you can always pull queens down from your other bases. That's something we'll see a bit more of in another replay, and you can easily shut all of that stuff down. Roach Bane. Not really the topic we were talking about, but we might as well look at this fight as well. So here we see a big Roach Baneling attack because it's close spawns. Now something you can really pay attention to is the splitting of the drones, all this sort of stuff. This is all pretty fancy micro, but it is going to actually allow us to survive this attack pretty decently. Now there's a lot of details there in terms of the way I was setting up my units in a concave. I was pulling the units back in squads as they were getting overwhelmed so that the concave kind of stayed in formation, but I was pulling sections of it back a little bit at a time to maintain the superior position. But in the follow-up here, we're actually going to see a really big mistake. Now, on the minimap, we see a lot of speedlings still coming. So we see he was still reinforcing this attack, and this is where we make a vital error. So, roaches versus Zerglings. You guys, I'm going to see this mistake like all the time, even in pro games, but it's something which is really silly. If you're facing Zerglings with just roaches, they have the mobility advantage. If there's a lot of them and you don't have that many roaches, I mean, we've got a lot here, but they can't cover everywhere. The most important thing you can do is get 4 roaches on hold position on your ramp. You get 4 roaches on hold position on that ramp, and suddenly, yeah, the rest of your roaches can be positioned like around your third, around your natural. Yeah, maybe they dart into your natural, but guess what? You've got roaches just here. You've got roaches just here. They can react to that. You can pull the drones into the main, and they're safe. There's nowhere else for them to do damage. But if you suddenly leave that open, and you're only defending, say, the natural in here, if they dart in, they've got an open mineral line, and they can run circles around your main base for days. And this is actually probably the game-ending mistake in this particular replay. We're at just 38 drones against 43, but we have a lot of roaches, which will actually help in the later battles. Our opponent doesn't. And we've got +1 on the way. And our lair's finished, so we can start roach speed at any moment now. But we're about to take a whole bunch of damage because we're not prepared for this. Even though we split our roaches up, we're going to kill a few Zerglings on the way through. But look at this. The Zerglings are just going to dive in. He splits into both of those mineral lines as we said he would. And even though we're trying to pull these drones away, we're going to take a lot of damage. Of course, that's another point. Always do try to pull drones away. A lot of players do just leave their drones idle. Whenever there's enemy lings in your base, box the drones, try to run them to another base, or just clump them all up on a mineral patch so that at least it's hard for them to all focus fire single drones. Notice how he's trying to target these drones. Right, here's another mistake in this game. We should have grabbed all those drones, clicked them on a mineral patch. Not only would that have brought the drones closer to the roaches, it would have made it so all the drones are clumped up. Even if he's trying to shift click on those drones and target them down, he's not actually going to be able to do it effectively. Most of his Zerglings are going to be hitting different drones, and more than likely not, he will damage 5, 6, 7 drones, but he will only kill at most 1 or 2, whereas he actually killed 3 or 4 drones there. So a series of small mistakes there has actually cost us huge damage in this game. And now we've got a significant drone deficit. We see we're down 7, 8, 9 drones. Our opponent's catching up in tech as well. So this all kind of adds up in these games, and it makes a really big difference. Alright, so going to be just glancing at my notes and check, are there some important points we haven't talked about just yet in this game specifically? the power of aggressive trades. So yeah, we already talked about that idea of if you're attacking, your opponent's going to take bad trades until they have an anchor up, until they have some queens and a spine up front. Or just a bunch of queens can do it. But if you're not a higher level player, a spine makes it a lot easier. It has a lot more damage and much further range. Of course, that's also something where having a hotkey for your defense queens or your creep queens is always very helpful. I mean, especially in Legacy, where the game's more fast-paced, where creep spreads a lot faster, but also recedes a lot faster when it's cleared. I think it's very important for everyone to have a creep queen hotkey. So that's kind of like a general pointer, which I think just about every Zerg player should have at the moment. So what we see here as well is we start to see some of these mid-game pointers. Roach Ravager is pretty much the standard Zerg vs Zerg situation right now. Getting those 4 Ravages as early as possible is one of the most useful things you can do because it allows you to snipe down Overlords. It allows you to just use those 4 casts, snipe down the Overlords, and until Overlord speed finishes, it's very difficult for players to dodge them. Notice we did a very quick reaction there, and we're dodging it for a bit. We needed to change angle again. But realistically, slow Overlords will always die to that. Okay, cool. So now we're going to look at some details here in terms of it's a very close Roach vs Ravager game. You guys can see, okay, sniping down some Overlords, we're doing our thing. Now I've got a huge upgrade advantage. I have +2 here, whereas +1's only just about to finish. My +2's already like past halfway. Ooh, we even got an Overseer that was moving. If you anticipate well enough, you can get that. This is also a situation where you can see we're casting the Corrosive Biles very quickly. One of the most essential things you guys have to do if you don't want to cry yourself to sleep when you're using Ravagers is you need to put Rapid Fire on that Corrosive Bile. Now what Rapid Fire means is you can just hold that key down and it will wave your mouse around. You don't even need to click and it'll spam those casts out really fast. All you need to do is, if you don't know how to do it, search up Rapid Fire hotkey trick, and you will find a bunch of guides on it. I'm not going to go through it because it's boring to change a bunch of hotkeys, but that's one of the most essential things. Now, at this point in the game, we get to the point where it's very similar to Hot Zerg vs Zerg in that it's Roach vs Roach. You don't have an absolutely staggering economy. We've got 58 versus 59 drones. We've been kind of scouting each other's bases. We've both seen that we've both taken 5 or 6 gas, and we're both just kind of posturing now. But the difference with Ravagers is it's much harder to attack into Ravagers than it was into Roaches. Now we're trying to take a fight here with a bit of a flank, but you can see that with these defensive Corrosive Biles that he's casting out, he keeps on forcing me to split, letting me take damage, and I can't really just get on top of his army and absolutely punish him unless I really get him with a bit of a surround. Now this is really important because if you can't attack front on as well as you could in Hots, it's not quite as focused on I've got the bigger Roach Ball, I'm going to attack you when I've got the better upgrade, and I win, as long as you don't have an amazing concave. And it becomes much more about positioning and counterattacks. Look here, at this position, around this piece of terrain, my army got split up, cornered, and absolutely smashed there. We just took staggering damage. And this is one of those moments where players, this happens to them in a game, and they go, what the fuck just happened? Zerg vs Zerg is so unfair, this is crap, this is so bullshit. But let's take a second back and let's show you guys some things which are happening off screen, which even the players who are doing it often don't take into account. So let's go back just about 40 seconds or a minute and let's take into account the situation one more time. And this is why it's important to watch replays, because sometimes you'll, in the heat of a fast-paced Zerg vs Zerg, you'll forget some of these fundamental things. Yeah, we're defending here, this is great. But let's look at the units count. Very identical drone counts. We have 10 more Roaches and 1 less Ravager. So we've actually got a bigger army right now. But he's got 6 more Roaches in production. They'll be joining soon, which will balance that out a lot more. And my +2 is about to finish, whereas his has just started. So we're about to have a really staggering upgrade advantage, which is why we definitely want to take a fight. But let's take a look around quickly. He threatened with a pack of Zerglings. We saw this with our Overseer Scout, so we've sent a pack of Roaches up here. That's 7 Roaches, not in our army, whereas that is only 14 Zerglings. So that's 7 army supply, whereas this here is 14 army supply. So that means that's 7 less army supply we have down here with our force. Okay, that's fine. Better safe than sorry. But what we're going to do here in the follow-up of this fighting is we're actually going to split off even more roaches, and we're going to do a counterattack down the south into his natural. So let's put the hotkeys on standard so I can do the zoom out, because I don't know what the zoom out is on otherwise. So we get a couple ravages there. Yeah, not the worst trade. I don't really know who won that. You know, that looked pretty even. But this is where things get interesting. So we're pushing forward here with our army, because we sense strength with that +2 upgrade. Now we cleared that up, and we're sending these roaches on a counterattack. So these roaches, we've queued up an attack move to come up here and get into his 4th base. At this point in the game, the 4th base is getting very important, because not only is your main down to only 4 mineral patches, but your natural at 11 minutes gets down to about 4 mineral patches. We see 1 patch has run out, and these other 3 patches are very low. So that 4th base, even if you're only on 55, 60 drones, starts to become very important at this point. So not only are we now pushing closer to his reinforcement point, but we've got a lot of roaches up there. We killed those zerglings, which means that's more roaches he's refilling into his main army. And now we're going to split off some roaches to the south, because we love counterattacking. We think it's hard to force your way in the front, but if we can do damage from behind and just use our ravages defensively on the front, then that's going to be great. And this is actually going to make the huge blunder. We just split some roaches off down here, which is what we were doing. And he's pounced on top of us. So we've actually got 10 roaches we've taken out of our army, and we're splitting our units around this bit of terrain. So this was way too aggressive of us. We needed to say to ourselves, look, if we're splitting off that many roaches, we need to be so much more careful with our main army. Yeah, we've got 1 more upgrade, but guess what? Bile is a bit more important than just having a slight upgrade lead. And if you're wrapped around a piece of terrain like this, that's horrible. Whenever you're in a defensive stance with your main army, which you want to be if you're counterattacking hard, right? Your main army is just meant to distract and defend. It's meant to hold a forward position to kind of threaten, but if they actually try to fight you, you're going to have to like stagger backwards, which means you want to have a wide open area. Say my army was here. He pushes in here. If he corrosive biles, we can pull back, pull back, pull back, and we're still in a concave. Corrosive biles again, pull back, pull back, pull back. We've got plenty of space to spread back without sacrificing the position. Suddenly here, look at this. He's got a fantastic concave, and our army is pressed up against this piece of terrain. We're forced to kind of run away here. We probably should have split both ways. And our army from the south is trying to come up to support, but this is an absolutely appalling position for us. And now we actually should just turn tail, run, and try to get more roaches out and assume a position back there, because we simply do not have the numbers. And now he's getting to the point where he actually can just shove his way through. So this is a point where it's like, get out of there, man. Yes, keep using the biles in front of his army to try to keep him back, but I think we definitely didn't realize, hey, wait a second. We were already in a bad position in that other fight. Now we've just lost a bunch of units to that horrible positioning. Get back, and take the fight. And this is all because we didn't take into account the fact that we committed a large portion of our army to getting over there and wrecking his economy. We've already lowered his work account down to about 10 less than ours, but we've given him an opportunity to pounce on top of our army. We gave up that defender's advantage of our ravages by letting him pounce on top, get such a number advantage that he didn't even give a shit. We didn't have enough damage combined with those ravages to stop him from thrusting onto us, and that's when things start to fall apart. So similar to in HOTS, where often you'd see a player with 12 less drones suddenly win a fight very decisively and then win the game, even though they'd been down in economy all game. In Legacy of the Void, it's the same situation, where if you have a much bigger army, the other player has to be careful. So if you're the player who likes to counterattack, which I think is one of the best ways to play in Legacy of the Void, then you've got to be very careful when you're counterattacking. Your main army has to be very careful. You've got to zone with those biles and never let them just pounce on top of your army without being punished very hard by the corrosive bile. So this is a classic example of one of these games where it's going well, it's going pretty alright, you've held on, but then you've made a series of very big mistakes, which what could have been an easy game has suddenly become a very hard game. And we are now overwhelmed, we are dead. GG. And yeah, we're building Zerglings to the Zerglings instead, and it's over. Cool. Alright. So I think that's a really good replay to look at, because it shows us some of that more action-packed Ling Bane. Not huge commitments of Ling Bane, but it showed us some of that. and it shows us some really good fine details, which really screwed us up that game. In terms of just not positioning our roaches correctly, we knew Zerglings were coming, and we just did a very lazy split with those roaches in the early game. That huge Speedling run by was one of the biggest turnarounds in that game. But then even in the late game, or the later stage of that game, we still ended up in that very dire position because we didn't understand exactly what was going on. So we've talked a bit about defending 13-12 with hatch first. We've talked a bit about your Ling Bane micro, as well as a little bit of that roach mid game. Something we kept touching on was that idea of having an anchor at the front, just playing more defensively, not getting into the crazy action-packed Ling Bane. And we were also talking about how a fast third is actually standard in this game called Legacy of the Void, because if you don't take that fast third, your economy kind of sucks and you can't really keep up. So we are going to watch a game now. It's actually not a complete game, but it is a game versus Scarlet from just the other day on the NA ladder. So it is me versus Scarlet, and this game's good because it shows both of us playing very foreigner style, very let's build drones for the first 8 minutes of the game, or I guess it's Heart of the Swarms for the first 5 or 6 minutes of the game. So what we want to look at in this is how do you take a fast third, how can you do it safely, and we're going to look at both of our builds, compare a bit. It's not the perfect example. I've actually only recently swapped away from the very aggressive, more Korean-esque style to trying to very much solidify a defensive style. But I know this is something a lot of players out there are going to be very interested to learn, because a lot of you guys are always asking, what's a solid way to get to that point? What's a solid way I can kind of move into that stage of the game? So that's what we're going to look at. And yeah, this basically is a really good build for that. So let's bring our notes up on the second monitor here and let's take a glance. Let's take a gander at the notes. Alright, so this game is going to cover a few things. Taking a third safely, a relatively standard opening, not perfectly executed in this replay, but we're going to tell you what we do wrong and tell you where to adjust that. And then we're going to take a look at the mid-game. And the mid-game is the most interesting part in Legacy of the Void Zerg vs. Zerg. And I think a lot of players are missing out right now because they don't have that stable early game. They still need to work on their Ling Bane control. And most importantly, they need to work out a build order to get that anchor up, get that fast third up. That's what we'll talk about at the start of this game. But then we're going to talk about that crazy mid-game in Legacy. In this game, there's going to be a lot of roach drops, quite a few counter-attacks. There's going to be Ravagers, Lurkers, and it will be about to get to that Hive Tech stage when unfortunately Scarlet did drop out of this replay. And that stage is so uncharted right now. You'd need to ask a Firecake or a Snoot, someone who plays a lot of kind of European ladder late game ZVZ about that. For me, I only get to ladder on Korea and NA from Australia, which means I get to play a lot more aggressive styles. And the occasional game against someone like Scarlet who really wants to build drones and go to that mid game. So the important thing is, once again, we're going hatch first here. Now, in this game, we make it easy for ourselves. How do we make it easy for ourselves this game? Well, we take our hatchery at the front. This is a little bit greedy. It can go down a bit easier. However, against most cheesy attacks, you have to sacrifice your hatchery on other maps anyway. So I figure, why not take this base? And this allows us to get some creep out here and defend the front very easily. And our third base can go down pretty much for free in the back. You can do the exact same thing on Dusk Towers. It's a preference thing. It's not something everyone should do, but it's something you can definitely take into account. Of course, one of the most important things is to scout very early on in Zerg vs. Zerg and try to keep an eye on what your opponent's doing. What we're going to see up here is that there is a Baneling nest already halfway done, and otherwise everything looks very normal. There's plenty of drones. The Zerglings are trying to harass them, not really getting much done. Oh, I do get one drone actually. Yeah, that's nice. And we've actually forgotten our Baneling nest. So normally you'd go straight for your standard 17 hatch, 17 pool, 16 gas, something along those lines. You drop your Baneling nest after Zergling speed when you first get 50 gas. You go immediately for a third queen. And then around 40 to 44 supply, this is when you take that third base. Now this is not the absolute fastest third, but it does allow you to basically saturate your two bases as quickly as possible. You want to build about 6 Zerglings when your Baneling nest is halfway done. That allows you to be 100% safe because you've got 6 Banelings. And then from this point, you're really safe. You want to also add a 4th queen. So after you take your third base, soon after then, around the time you're morphing some safety banelings and everything, or probably a bit after that, you're going to start a fourth queen as well. And the idea is, if your opponent starts all winning you, say I see this big swell of Zergling baneling, we can react to that by pulling that anchor down. Now, you're going to notice here, we see this Lingbane coming. We don't have a spine, and we also only have 2 banelings morphing, so like, okay, let's put a spine down to be safe. You guys can always do this, especially if you're not playing top level. I mean, a spine crawl is just such a good anchor, it works well. The main thing is we're pulling the queen from the main. So on top of our extra queen that was already down here, we've now got 3 queens. And those are just going to form such a scary anchor. And Scarlet, as an experienced player, recognizes that she's not going to get damage done. Just 2 banelings, 2 more morphing, and 3 queens. She's like, nah, we're not getting in. Not with this many Zerglings. This is not a huge all-in or a huge pressure she's doing. She's like, alright, I'm just going to save my units and save space. If she did try to go in, the banelings would just move command back and forwards, making sure she can't run into the ramp or the mineral line, and making sure she can't surround the queens. And the queens would just focus fire the banelings. The Zerglings wouldn't be able to engage because we wouldn't let our banelings detonate unless they get a really good hit. And basically, she'd lose all her banelings, her Zerglings would have to retreat, and that would be that. So this is the easiest way to secure a fast third, is you just build extra queens straight away, you make sure you've got banelings morphed the moment your baneling nest is finished, and then bam, you drop your third at 40-44 supply. Once you're oversaturated on 2 bases, so you wait until you've got too many drones, and then you go gas, gas, lair, roach warren, evolution chamber, all around the same time. Just once you've got too many drones here, or if there's been a lot of fighting early on, your third might have already been finished and you might have drones rallied here. So once you've got a handful of drones, say 6 drones on your third base, that's probably the latest that you want to go for lair, roach warren, double gas, evo chamber. This is your standard progression. On the other side of the map, we see a very similar build up from Scarlet. The only difference is she soon after that grabbed a 4th gas as well to give her a bit of extra gas income. And is even going up to that very fast 5th and 6th gas, as well as a fast 4th base. Scarlet playing very greedy here. Now this is a good map for it though. We're doing pretty much the same thing, just a little bit slower. Saturating your bases, saturating your bases. Now how do we know it's safe for people to just saturate up to 3 bases? This is something where you'll always see pro players just like build a billion drones and not die most of the time. You're like, how the frack do they know to do that? It's basically just scouting your mineral lines. So one of the most important things, which far too many people don't do, is check those third mineral lines. So we're going to go back to kind of the crucial point when we were actually droning these bases up. And this is always something you have to do, where if you don't have any information, you should probably be building roaches off about 2 bases saturated. But look at this. Once those thirds are finishing and you're thinking about droning your third, they're thinking about droning theirs, you need to have eyes on that base and you need to see, are there drones going there? Because if say 30 seconds, a minute from now, I still see no drones, I start to worry that they're attacking. And I say, look, if I've got 5, 6, 7 drones on my third, you don't have any on yours, that's a healthy lead, but we're going to stop there and we're going to build units, because you're going to, otherwise if you're just non-stop building units, I mean you clearly are because you're not building drones, you're going to be able to overwhelm me and kill me. So normally about 8 drones is the sort of healthy lead you want in a Zerg versus Zerg game, assuming it's even. And that actually allows you to just be very safe. So what you often do, I mean, I pulled the Overlord back, is I'm going to either poke back in there or I'm going to morph to an Overseer and go in there in a little while. We see an Overseer morphing now, and I'm going to come in and just check, are there roaches rallying out, are there drones rallying out? I should be able to see the mineral line from there as well. And just check the tech, make sure there's no sneaky spy or anything like that. Obviously, the Overseer is just the fundamental Zerg vs Zerg thing you should do every single game. Sorry, not just Zerg vs Zerg. It's the general StarCraft thing you should do when your lair finishes every single game. Unless you have Overlord speed, in which case a regular Overlord can do the same job. Changeling, here we go. So the Changeling's checking the third. I've seen 2 gases already down and lots of drones coming out. So I'm just like, oh, I even see the drone there mining that gas. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you're not going to be aggressive at all. And we can see that I'm just going to make a shit ton of drones back home, saturate all my bases, drop my own 4th, and be in a good position. Now, that's your early game, right? Now it can get very crazy when you're defending with that anchor and stuff. There's a lot of variability to it, but as long as you keep making banelings and queens, you'll find yourself getting to this situation in the game more and more. Now, we've gone up to both 65, 60, 68, 67 drones. So whenever you do that, it's important to take a 4th base, no later than about 6 minutes 30. The reason is, you've already saturated all 3 mineral lines. In my case, I actually haven't taken my 6th gas. That's just a mistake. I think I forgot about it. So what's going to happen is at 8 minutes is your benchmark for your main minerals running out. So it takes about a minute, minute and a half for a hatchery to finish. So you want to have that hatchery finished by 8 minutes so you can send 8 drones from your main down and actually have somewhere to mine. So getting the 4th base down is super duper important. Now from this point, we've talked about the early game. We're talking now about all the cool, crazy mid-game parts. This is where we get to see some interesting things. We saw that 4 Ravager squad out of Scarlet, the same one we were using before, to one-shot Overlords. So what do we do to counter that? We've actually got Overlord speed, and we've put our Overlords on patrol paths. This makes it so much harder to target them. Something you can do is you can be a bit fancy and do it like haphazard, do like a square patrol path, so it's not as easy to predict. Some people like to do that. Personally, I think just doing it like this is easy. Just do a single line. And you can put these Overlords all over the map until Hydras are out. This just gives you fantastic vision. So Scarlet, you know, misjudged that. Does miss that Overlord. And you see we're sending out tons of Overlords right now. Also, because drops are so cheap right now, you can go for drop upgrades in your Overlords. Super easy. So we're going for double Overlord drop over here. We've just upgraded 2 Overlords, going to send those 8 Roaches. Now remember what we were talking about before. If you're committing a lot of units to a counterattack, you want to threaten with your main army, but the moment your opponent shows that they're willing to engage, you need to be very defensive, very careful, and you need to make sure you only take a very good defensive fight. Now, interestingly enough, we know that this is a popular thing to do, which is why, even though I don't think we spotted this, we're seeing Scarlet come in with 3 Banelings and 5 Roaches. So already we are building a single spine crawler in each mineral line, and we even built a spore crawler because we knew where are we going to get dropped the most. This is the most common location to drop, so we even built a spore crawler. Now you can't always afford to do these. Usually it's better to just have an Overlord spread, react, and once you see they're willing to start dropping, put the spines down. But if you've got excess money, you're playing against this, it's common in your league, this is one of the best things you can do to stop that. A spine will buy you enough time to get some Roaches back to help defend. Now, what your opponent can do though, because Zerg anti-air is very scant, is they can pick up with the Overlords just like a Terran would, drop in the next base, pick up, drop in the next base. So often you do need to right click on those Overlords with your Queens, focus them down so that they actually have to leave the base eventually. So this is going to be the point where we do catch Scarlet out for a little bit of her earlier greed and most importantly a lack of scouting in terms of Overlords. We're running with a Zergling counterattack at the same time because we had those left over. Unfortunately a Spine just cleans that up. Luckily for us, the Spore Crawler is going to shoot down this drop very easily. And our main army here, even though smaller, it's fending off her army because we've got those defensive corrosive vials. Meanwhile, the Roaches are just doing so much damage to the drones, and this is a really great situation. I think when you're first getting used to this style, you basically just want to keep on going mass Roach Ravager all game, never go past this drone count, never go past this tech, just keep upgrading your Roach Ravager, and look at this. We just pick up and then we drop again because we saw that she pulled back, kill a few more drones, pick up again. Now we start flying the other base. Something we could actually have done here is grab these Overlords, turn around and just drop back there again. And that would have been the best. That's what Terran players do all the time. So you just got to imagine you're a Terran player. You're just like wanting to piss off the Zerg. You just want to be a massive douchebag. And that's the best way to play it. So Hydras do pop out now and start to shut this down. But because we've distracted, we're trying to thrust on the 4th base at the same time. Now this attack doesn't end up being too well executed. Scarlet's actually very well prepared, not having pulled too much army back to defend the drops. And we get a little bit over aggressive trying to do damage here. But it's not the worst trade. If we'd actually been, considering we killed so many drones, we do really want to trade. This is where basic mechanics start to fail us a little bit. Look at all these injects we've missed. So we're starting to queue up some more injects now. Spend all that energy, but it's going to take a while for us to spend our money. Whereas if we could remax straight away, send in some more multi-prong drops, we see that Scarlet's actually very starved right now. She can't afford spine crawlers in these bases, so she has to just make sure she is defending all of her mineral lines perfectly on the ball. And that's going to be so hard because she should be afraid of my main army. Even though she's got Hydras, her Lurker Den's just started. Lurkers are the only unit which can defend insanely cost efficiently, and this makes it very scary for her. However, because we messed up those injects, the game's going to slow down a little bit. But already we're covering a few really cool details here, right? Overlord speed. If you get that before they get their 4 Ravager squad, you're not going to lose all your Overlords on the map. Okay, that's awesome to know. What's another cool thing? Get 4 Ravagers as early as possible. The earlier you get them, the earlier you start screwing up your opponent's screwing up your opponent's map vision. Screwing up their map vision is amazing because that opens up opportunities to multi-prong. So notice even now, even though Scarlet has Overlord speed, I'm still trying to kill as many of these Overlords as I can. And something else we can learn from this is, imagine if Scarlet did already have Hydras out when that first drops came. She would have shut these down a lot sooner, a lot faster. So definitely mixing Hydras in earlier is a way to limit this sort of play, counteract it, and punish it. From here, the game slows down a bit. There's not too much else to see because unfortunately the game does freeze up. You know, we're going in with another drop, which is great. Unfortunately, Scarlet also put a Spore Crawler in the money spot down here at that base where everyone loves to drop, as well as one up there, which my empty drop goes into. And she also starts to counterattack herself. Rather than going drops, if you prefer, you can still do the old school Roach Burrow. It's so much more powerful than in HOTS because you have to expand more, you have to spread out across more bases. So it just makes a really big difference. Now, we did get some Roach drop in the main as well, so we are still picking off some drones here and there. But we have to pull back to try and defend this base now. We have to shut down these Roaches. Oh, this is a cool move. And this is just where lurkers start to come into play for both sides. Now, it gets weird, right? Because Ravagers make it more defensive. Lurkers make it another step defensive beyond that, in that they can hold positions and be real dickbags, but they can't really attack very well. So what you want to do is you want to hold the key positions, keep your opponent back, while counter-attacking with your more mobile units. Now what we did here is we turned off the free fire and just turned it on once our army was on top of ours. That's always a cute thing which you can use. The default hotkey is F. If you're using a custom hotkey setup, you might want to change it. But yeah, we get a good trade there, right? Now from this stage, where do you want to go at Hive Tech? I think Vipers and Ultras is probably one of the most solid. This game, I was trying out Broodlords. I don't get to play this stage of the game very often. I have no friggin' clue what works from here. But Broodlords I've seen do really good damage considering they still can't be abducted by Vipers. They're immune to that. They've got the Frenzy status, I believe. And yeah, and Blinding Cloud doesn't do all that much to them unless you clump them up a lot as well. Sorry, Parasitic Bomb, not Blinding Cloud. So yeah, at this point we're just trying to multi-prong, trying to limit bases, do what damage we can while we get up towards that higher tech. We see this butt ton of lurkers, snipe one off, run away. We can keep doing moves like that, but I really think we should have kept the tempo going with just continuing to multi-prong drop, do all that stuff. As you practice this style, you'll get better at just keeping those waves of drops going over and over. Try not to run in like that, obviously that's a pretty bad move. And at this point, Scarlet's about to drop out of the game, so not too much to learn from that. Alright. Alright. Oh shit. Oh my god, you're kidding me. I accidentally just deleted chat, so anyone who does have any good questions and stuff, do hang on to them. We'll be getting around to question time very soon. We're almost out of time. So, do we have any other very important points we wanted to touch on before we finish up today and go to questions and start kind of going through that? There was some info I wanted to go on about safe openings. I don't think we have time to talk about that in detail, but mid-game notes, did we talk about this? The more pressure you put on, the more you multi-prong, the easier it is because you don't need to defend at the same time. So that's something we didn't really touch on, is if you're attacking, you notice that it was very easy for me to defend my bases. I didn't even really need all these spines and so on. I put them all down, which is probably more a sign of trauma than the fact that I actually needed them. But if you are attacking, you can skimp on defense. If you keep your opponent at home, it's very hard for them to cover all their bases and almost impossible for them to ever get a fifth base. So that actually does make a really big difference. And let's hop out. Alright, alright. So we got that back open. There we go. Okay, cool, cool. If you guys do want to see some really safe openings, I recommend checking out some of the replay packs of the Korean Cups, like the Corsair Cup, which I believe is the Olimo League that's been rebranded under Corsair, and a few of those other base trade replay packs. So I recommend you guys sub to them and check out some of the Korean games on maps like Prion Terraces and Old Arena. You'll see them doing a lot of 17 gas, 17 pool, 17 hatch, or some slight variation of that. So that's something which is very cool as well. But for now, I think we'll hop straight into question time. So guys, shout out your questions. Ask me as much as you can. I'm sorry I deleted the earlier chat, so I can't scroll up and see them all. But please shout out as many questions as you can in chat, and I will answer them as best I can. We'll have a bit of a discussion. So we can start off with Love Tool SC2. He says, my question is, what is a strong late game composition to go for? Assuming the mid game style you just covered, Broodlords, Ultras, when to use Vipers, etc. Thanks. Well, at the end of that game, I was going for Broodlords. I was like, I'm going to keep multi-pronging, hit with the surprise Broodlords, and hopefully just overwhelm and win. Scarlet, on the other hand, was going for Vipers. Now, I think Vipers are the most basic logical unit to get because they're very multi-purpose. They counter air units to a certain extent in that you can use Parasitic Bomb. Not the greatest against Broodlords, but hey, if you catch the Broodlords all clumped up a bit, maybe you can kill them with that. Most importantly, Blinding Cloud and Abduct. If you're in a static position where you've both got lots of lurkers set up, you can't really move, suddenly you abduct 4 or 5 lurkers into your army. That actually uproots them as well, so they won't fire once they've been abducted. Kill them, suck more energy, continue. Or if you want to do a big attack, you cover their entire army with Blinding Cloud. If you have Roach Hydra Viper versus just Roach Hydra, sorry, say you have Roach Lurker. So Roach Ravager Lurker versus Roach Ravager Lurker. Whoever gets Vipers first can just attack. Blinding Cloud the opponent's army. And the opponent, if they don't have anywhere to back away to, like they're screwed, right? Because the moment you get Blinding Clouds dropping you, you've got to pull back. You're going to take a lot of damage retreating, but if you've got enough space to fall back and the Vipers are out of energy, maybe you can hang on. No matter what, though, it's going to be an amazing trade for that Viper player. So definitely check that out. Think about going Vipers as a default unit. Adding melee upgrades is also a great thing to do. But most importantly, Carapace upgrades and Chitinous Plating. If you get +3 Carapace, Chitinous Plating Ultralisks, they just do not die. They ignore Roaches and Hydras. They don't give a crap about anything. They're a disgustingly good unit. And they're so much more mobile than Broodlords that I think it gives you more options in terms of denying your opponent's bases, hitting from multiple sides, coming from all the different angles. So that can make a really big difference. So I think Vipers and then Ultras is probably the best way to go as a standard transition. GG makes this in a maxed out game. What's the sweet spot number of Ravagers that's most efficient? No one knows. I'd love to hear some people's thoughts on it. A lot of players end up going up to like 20, 25 because there's so many biles dropping down, you can't really dodge them. However, there is a point where it becomes more and more all in. So I think the more Ravagers you make, the more damage you need to do with them. Excuse me. The problem is if you make heaps of Ravagers and your opponent gets Lurkers and doesn't really let you push in with them, over time they're going to get better and better units. More Lurkers, eventually they'll get Ultras, which don't care about Ravagers at all, and your Ravagers become less efficient. Also, Ravagers are very expensive and not that buff, so you can slightly win a few fights in terms of you kill more of their army supply than yours, but if you're losing most of your, mostly Ravagers, and they're losing mostly Roaches, it might actually be that they're being more resource efficient than you are. So generally, I like to say start out with your 4 Ravagers, focus more on mass Roaches, and steadily add more and more Ravagers, and try to get up to at least 10 in a maxed out composition, but as many as 15 to 16. I'd say somewhere between there is probably the sweet spot for a maxed out army. I think beyond that, it does become a bit too cost efficient, but it's still very much experimental and it's hard to say for sure. I see a lot of players who just try to kill people. Zelathar says, my question is, in Roach vs. Roach, why would it be better to add Ravagers rather than staying on just pure Roach? The reason is that Roaches are a short-range, quite clunky unit, and they need to kind of get up close to actually do their damage. So the thing is, if you've got a Roach Ravager army, and the Roach player surrounds it, gets like great flank, the Roach player doesn't give a shit, because he can just be like, oh, I don't even give a fuck about losing these units, they're cheap. He just like gets on top and just kills everything, right? And even if it's an even trade, he's like, well, I don't care, because they were Roaches, you lost Ravagers, it's way more expensive. However, most of the time, the Roach player can't just engineer an amazing flank. And in a front-on position, you've got 2 lines of troops, but then there's corrosive biles falling on the Roaches, in front of the Roaches, and behind the Roaches. The fuck do the Roaches move? They just have to keep pulling back from the battle over and over again. Not only that, but Ravagers have superior range. So each time you force them to disengage, your Ravagers are getting off extra shots. Also, when you have Roaches in front, Ravagers behind, it forms that old formation that Roach Hydra used to form. You know, you've got 2 ranks fighting versus just 1 rank fighting. So it really does make it awkward for the Roach player to engage. They need to kind of come in from more angles. They need to kind of hug up against you in order to get the surface area. And that means using slightly more defensively focused biles can just absolutely wreck the pure Roach player. So it's very tricky to just focus on that. Dark Voice says, my question is, roaches always win versus roaches and roaches in my games. We train from top time to low masters. Is this always true? I don't let biles land on my units and my roaches overwhelm them. Now, the reason that's true is because most players aren't managing their economy correctly. Like I said, try to get 4 Ravages as fast as you can. But what I often see, even at GM level, is players just building 4 Ravages and they have no roaches. They don't have gas. So they just, I guess I just droned 66 drones with 4 Ravages. Oh, my opponent didn't drone their 3rd. I died. That's all often what happens, right? These players spend way too much getting their gas up. The other guy's only on 4 gas, 55 drones. And the other guy's not only droned too much, but he's put too many drones into extractors. He's put too many drones onto gas, which is not minerals. And the Ravages only really take effect as the armies get bigger. So you always want to focus on mainly getting up to about 20, 25 speed roaches before Ravages matter. Now, the only reason you want to get those early 4 Ravages is to snipe Overlords, if you can afford them. If you're behind, you're in a very close game, you can't afford those Ravages usually. Just focus on roaches, focus on surviving. Once you get above 20 roaches, 25 roaches, suddenly having a few Ravages in there is always going to be valuable because it forces your opponent to dodge them. But the thing is, if you've got a small army, half of its Ravages, your opponent can so easily dodge the biles. Whereas when you're talking about big armies and you've also got a lot of damage supporting, you're forcing your opponent to move around in a fight rather than fighting. That's always going to be good for you. So the bigger the fight gets, the bigger the armies get, the more Ravages become important. Quasman says, hey Pig, do you think a Ling Queen Infestor 6 to 8 infestors with Neural would make for a strong 6 to 7 minute 7 ZVP combo? I don't think Neural Parasite's ever particularly powerful because the infestors themselves are very weak and Neural's very short range. So I definitely think you could do a fun timing like that. Would it be the most efficient, most powerful timing? No, because pylon cannons are very powerful, right? You also need power units to actually Neural Parasite. Say you've built 4 infestors. Or you said 6 to 8 actually, 6 infestors. Let's say 6 infestors, that's 150 gas for each one. That's 600 minerals, 900 gas. Now think about it. Best case scenario, you Neural Parasite 6 immortals. Or 6 immortals and Archons. This is the best case scenario. This is assuming he doesn't get a chance to focus fire any of them down. You somehow get in range and can kind of cast them all towards the start of the battle. Even then, you've basically like, okay, you've taken out stuff from his army and you've only spent a bit less money than he spent on those units. So that was worth it. That was really worth it because you get the damage of their units and you take the damage out of theirs. Realistically though, those units have often already done their damage before you get the Neural Parasite off. And then once the Neural Parasite's off, it's very hard to stop them, whether with pylon cannons, stalkers, or just whatever, focusing down the infestors. So it's one of those things where if you can get the fight to work just right, it can be amazing, but it's very hard to be consistent with. So as a pro gamer, I'm automatically like, oh, it's just too hard to make that consistently work. Is it something you can try on ladder and actually have decent success with? Definitely. Go for it. Go for it. It's going to be amazing. Amazing fun. All right, guys. So we do have time just for another question or 2 at most. Coolbum says, I was watching Fen earlier today. He crystal balled some lava cocoons for a ton of damage. Good food for thought in your next CVZ. That's really cool. That's a great idea. I guess it only takes 1 bile to kill a lava. So that's actually really smart. Kralik says, how do you prioritize range upgrades for Roach Hydra with melee upgrades for Ultras? Yeah, I don't really know. Depends if you've added a second Evo chamber or not. Normally I just go single Evo for most of the game. And I really focus on the Roach Ravager. So I don't have that refined just yet. Normally though, after +2 range, I'd probably focus on Carapace and then melee. I'd probably skip +3 range, even though it could be very useful. It depends how long you're staying on the Roach Hydra, how fast you're taking up towards the Ultralisks. Forcible says, Pig, how would you handle a situation where the opponent goes mutas? Well, there's 2 ways you can do that. Now, you've always got to Overseer Scout ASAP, as well as Zergling Scouting early can give you some good indicators. One way is to just do big Ling Bane pressures and try to just deny their 3rd and then be ahead. Another thing you can do, the other 2 choices of actual combating the mutas is build a lot of Queens the moment you scout it, and a lot of roaches. Only saturate your bases to about 55 drones, build a Nidus into, outside their base and just push in with Queen Roach. That can be a good way to do it if you scout it early enough. The other way is simply to saturate your 3 bases, build spores at the last minute, have a few extra queens, and just go straight for Infestation Pit and Hydra Den, and go straight for Hive. Don't go for Infestors, just go for Roach Hydra, and add Vipers if they build a lot of Mutalisks. If they don't build a lot of Mutalisks, you might still want Vipers, because a lot of the time the two options, right, is they go heavy Mutiling Bane into Ultras or Broodlords. Vipers are going to be amazing at killing off the Mutas. Roach Hydra should be able to push through the ground army. Awesome, thumbs up, that'll work. That'll kill them before they get the Hive Tech out. The other option is they go Mutas into a Lurker push. They're pushing you with Mutas in the air, Lurkers on the ground. How the frack do you deal with that? Oh, Vipers, Blinding Cloud on the Lurkers, Roach Hydra rolls it. Easy peasy. So those are the best ways to deal with Mutalisks. Zelthar says, another question, what's the most stable opening build considering Zergs can go 13 to 12? So Hatch First is the greedier version of the stable build. The most stable I'm going to get to the mid game every game is to do some form of a 17 gas, 17 pool, or you can swap those around if you want to be a bit more queen focused rather than fast as Lings and Banes, and an 18 hatch. So it's 17 pool or gas. 17, so 17 and 17 with the pool and gas, somewhere around there, 18 hatch, and that's one of your most solid openings. You can watch some of the tournaments of Korean players playing that quite a bit. Purple Pill says Pig Hydras should be avoided because their good DPS doesn't make up for them clumping and dying to bile. Question mark. Just make Hydras to turn them into Lurkers. For the most part, yes. Purple Pills, I mean, you can use them to clear up speed overlords on the map, to shoot down drops. A few of them mixed in your army is not a big problem, but you don't want to be massing Hydras because you can get your Ravagers so much earlier in the game, and they do such a good job for very similar cost. They do cost, I mean, a Hydra costs 100 minerals, 50 gas. A Ravager costs 100 minerals, 100 gas. A Ravager is more expensive, but because Ravagers, you can like make them just bam, turn 10 Ravagers into Ravagers. Usually they are the better unit. So normally, yes, you just use them to make into Lurkers. All right, guys, we are just going to take one more question before we finish this up. We are just focusing on ZVZ, so can't answer that question, Scarecrow. Sorry about that. There's a what I do, but I don't see a question. And what's the, yeah, okay. So I think that's pretty good. I think I answered all those questions there because the other ones are just basically clones of the other questions. All right. All right. That was a pretty good session. Sorry for kind of rambling on a bit there. I'm not used to just kind of analyzing replays and just talking about them in this sort of format. Normally I'm used to coaching where I'm catering it towards someone else's problems. Instead, I'm like, I'm doing this. I'm not doing it perfectly, but you do these things. But I think at the end we covered a lot of points. And I think there's so many of those fine details which players just ignore in Zerg vs. Zerg. I also think there aren't any guides out there, or not many guides, about how to do a solid Zerg vs. Zerg style. That's something I'm going to be releasing in the next week or two. So you guys can keep your eyes posted on Reddit, all things Zerg, Team Liquid, strategy. Yeah, if you guys have any other questions, do hop over to my stream. I'm gonna ask Lycan if he would be kind enough to host me. I'm gonna start my stream up right after this. But thanks for hanging out, guys. Enjoy the show. Don't forget to sub and to Lycan and give him some follows and stuff. Also, if you guys want really good replay packs of online tournament games to really keep up with the meta, go follow some guys like Base Trade TV and those sort of dudes send out sub replay packs. So definitely go get your hands on those if you can. I mean, I send out sub replay packs as well. But yeah, Lycan's awesome. So massive thanks for having me on and setting up this show. I think it's a really good way to keep this kind of educational content going and give people resources to learn the game. So thanks, guys. Don't forget to sub and support Lycan and everyone else who does good stuff in the community. Thanks for hanging out. Goodbye and good night.